Good afternoon. My name is John Littell, and I have the honor to serve as the Rector of the Board of Visitors. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome my former board members, the administration of Richard Bland College and William and Mary, all other participants, and members of the public watching on YouTube today's meeting. I'd like to specifically welcome our new Board of Visitor member, Cynthia Hudson, who is observing this meeting before joining us officially next month, and Carla Moreland, who represents the Alumni Association. Thank you for joining us, and Cynthia, we look forward to having you as a colleague. I'd also like to recognize Jessica Walton, who has since joined us as the Deputy Secretary of the Board of Visitors. Welcome. Lastly, we are also joined by Dr. Maria Velica, the incoming Dean of Arts and Sciences, and Ben Spencer, the incoming Dean of the Law School, or at least he will be when we vote on his nomination later today. We very much look forward to officially welcoming you when you start on July 1st. Today, the Board of Visitors is having its second full board meeting virtually in accordance with item 4-0.01.g of the 2020 amendments to the 2019 Appropriation Act, which provides governing boards the ability to hold meetings electronically without a quorum present while the Commonwealth is under a state of emergency. Note, all audio should be muted. For board members and staff members who wish to participate, please go ahead and identify yourself. It's been a little more than a month since we last convened. Closing out the academic year and responding to the pandemic has remained our focus, and more recently, ensuring that we could reopen safely for the fall semester at both Richard Bland College. We will hear about the plans for that reopening, as well as the financial implications of the pandemic for this and next fiscal year. In addition, since our last meeting, we have all watched the senseless murder of George Floyd and the protests that have followed, calling our nation, our institution, and each of us to make needed change. William and Mary and this board stand with our Black students, alumni, staff, and faculty in condemning racism and hatred in. We affirm that Black Lives Matter and aspire to be a learning community in which all individuals feel safe, valued, and an essential part of the fabric of our community. This is a poignant reminder of the lasting and continuing effect that slavery, segregation, and racism have played in William and Mary's history, and to recommit to continuing our collective work to address injustice and move towards reconciliation. It is ongoing and tough work, but it's essential for all of us. We will hear more about our actions related to this from President Rowe and others shortly. To start today's meeting, I'd like to ask President Saito to talk about the plans for reopening Richard Bland College this fall. President Saito.
Thank you, Director. It's good to see everyone look well. I would like to just remind you that since the middle of March, we have been managing through the crisis with a very large group of managers. We did flatten the organizational structure. We have what's called the COVID-19 management team that has worked consistently through consensus to make decisions for Richard Bland College. And a lot of decisions, big and small, have been made. We had two teams, one working on academic continuity, led by both our Director of Academics, Dr. Mary Gurnick, and also Celia Brockway, who is the Director of Student Success. You heard from both of them at an earlier meeting where we provided an update about the college's actions to respond to COVID-19. We had another group working simultaneously, led by Chief Jeff Brown, focused on the reopening from an operations point of view. About a month ago, I merged those two committees to a Tiger team to work collaboratively, understanding that what we do really has to be guided by the way that academics resume at the college. And so we have, and I have shared with you as of Friday, the attached document. Sorry, I don't have screen share, my apologies. I will just review with you um, very quickly that what this Tiger team did is to look at all of the documents that we had guiding us at that point, and there were many, um, certainly CDC and VDH at the time, but also we were looking at what other institutions were doing, both in Virginia and around the country. Um, we had guidance from the American Council on Education, and this group conducted that review and also opted to look at two feasible scenarios. One, a return to campus with mitigation strategies, and secondly, a fully online scenario. Um, Primarily, again, looking at determining that all classroom instruction would be delivered online in a synchronous and asynchronous format. Um, and secondly, that we would do what is called high flex in a way that faculty can be in a classroom delivering instruction to students who are socially distant while at the same time delivering synchronous instruction to students who may be sitting in their homes in front of a computer and kind of having that be an integrated experience and one that can easily be shifted to online if circumstances demand another shutdown. So again, the team reviewed all of the executive orders and other documents and ultimately opted um, for a reopening that would be the return to campus with mitigation strategy. I'm not going to go over all of the findings and all of the recommendations that were made. I will just say that we are in compliance with the guidance that was provided by the governor last week. We are currently working to flesh out the bare bones reopening plan that was announced last week. Now getting down to the nitty gritty of exactly in all of these areas how residents' life will reopen, how dining services will be provided, up to and including getting all of the tables appropriately placed and outdoor dining options provided. Um, One decision that I just announced earlier this afternoon is we will suspend RBC athletics for the 2020-2021 academic year. This is based on, again, the most recent guidance that we have, the governor, as well as just an understanding that with athletics requiring both in competition and in travel, on the bus, in the hotel, a lot of physical contact, we simply do not have the ability to social distance our athletes. And, the other thing I would say is we don't have the medical resources to be able to afford, we don't have the capacity in terms of medical resources to be able to manage athletics in the coming year. And so that was a very difficult decision, but it is necessary for Richard Bland College as we go into a year where we have more uncertainties than knowns at present. So I think I'll stop there before I go on to the new task force, racial justice equity, and ask if you have any specific questions about the plan that was released.
Madam President, this is Will Payne. Just a question on your last point. Have you seen what the impact is going to be on enrollment of student athletes, especially those who've been recruited, um, from outside this country? Um,
Yeah, well, um, yes, we have. We are anticipating that about 50% of the 80 athletes who had committed will opt not to enroll at Richard Bland, and that means that will be 40 fewer students in residence halls as well. But do keep in mind, we have had waivers, full waivers for 30 students typically. And so there will also be no waivers. We are taking a very personal approach in talking with the student athletes, explaining the situation, putting FAQs online. The communication plan was very detailed and is being worked even as we speak, so that our coaches have given the initial news to student athletes, but then they will continue follow-up calls, attempting to help students make the best choice. I want to say Richard Bland could have waited. We could have waited until July. We could have even waited until August to make the announcement about athletics. We simply don't think it's fair to not give students as much notice as possible. So at the point that we had enough information to convince our management team that this was the right decision, we wanted to call it and communicate it so that students can make informed decisions about where to attend college in the.
Right. Debbie, I think, one thing that I thought was really helpful about both your plan and William and Mary's has been that it's not static, that it's evolving, that you have, Catherine has set up a number of work groups, and you have the Tiger team, so that, we can be very responsive to what's happening on the ground and stuff like that. So just briefly talk about that, and then we'll move forward.
So in terms of adapting as we go forward, now that the Tiger team has done its work, completed, and we released our plan for fall, again, the skeleton, Chief Brown will continue in his role as our chief emergency manager, to take information, to continuously review information as it becomes available, and to make adjustments. We will, of course, respond. We've got the instructions from Chev about the report that will be due to them in early July. And again, we are just going to continue to adapt and make necessary adjustments every step of the way. A week seems like an eternity, so much can change time. And so, what I would tell you is, as an institution, we began making decisions, budgetary decisions and otherwise, in March, to give us the flexibility that we need to be able to operate with a continued focus on our core mission going into fall. So we feel very confident in where we sit today, having gone through essentially two phases of evaluating resources and modeling different scenarios that will allow us to be very nimble in entering the academic year with the resources intact, to be able to put our focus on a quality academic educational experience for our students. Mr. Rector, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
May I take just a moment to speak to our task force on racial justice and equity?
Sure.
Again, you've seen the plan, but I would just like to say that we've extended the invitation to a diverse group of college stakeholders and community stakeholders, and all except one person, and the invitation just went out last week, all have affirmed their enthusiasm about participating on a task force that is charged to conduct an honest assessment of RBC's historical record as it pertains to racial inequality in higher education in Virginia, in order to unpack those elements of oppression and privilege that have influenced the college's trajectory. And we are committed to charting a new course forward. We will generate a vision statement that outlines concrete action to be taken and an assessment plan to ensure that the college conforms to its articulated anti-racist multicultural identity. We will publicly articulate RBC's identity as a multicultural institution committed to anti-racist organizational development and commit to perpetual periodic training and evaluations. The assessment component is really important of how the faculty, staff, and administration are progressing toward the manifestation of this identity that we've established. We're going to do a comprehensive evaluation of policing on campus to identify and, as needed, rectify policies and practices related to accountability, racial bias, and use of force that don't align with RBC's articulated anti-racist multicultural identity. We are enlisting outside experts on diversity and inclusion to provide training for all employees, establishing relevant long-term service learning activities in Petersburg and the surrounding community. And finally, taking steps to make the faculty, staff, and administrators more racially and ethnically representative of the communities that we serve at the college. We have begun already, our academic leaders have begun a faculty-wide listening session, and that will continue throughout the summer to evaluate how we've done in being a welcoming, inclusive, multicultural, anti-racist environment and how we can do better. And I will tell you, I'm just very encouraged by those conversations. They're very candid, they're very raw, and they are really uncovering a lot of information that's going to be valuable to us moving forward. We are also working on a faculty statement commitment to propose to faculty assembly for formal adoption after the faculty listening sessions occur. And finally, providing faculty development that focuses on inclusive, anti-racist pedagogical approaches going forward. We will get underway next week. The first organizational meeting, our task force occurs next week, and I will be eager to present a timeline to this body when we gather again in the fall.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for President Saito? All right, great. I'd like to invite President Rowe to make opening remarks.
Thanks. I unmuted successfully.
You are?
Great. Thanks, Director Littell. So the same two topics for William and Mary as we close out FY20 that we'd like to update you on. One is our plans for the fall, and the second is how we've responded to the powerful and transformative national events of recent weeks that all of us have been talking about. In May, I shared that flattening the financial impact of COVID-19 was going to be a months-long effort, 18 months or more, we estimate. We've gained a lot of clarity in our planning ahead process, that there are ways to reopen and pursue teaching, learning, research under pandemic. It's going to be challenging and ultimately, I think, very rewarding work to see us through safely to the other side. Many questions remain. Our timeframe does remain 18 months of work as we see it right now. As you know, Sam Jones is going to be assuming the critical role of COVID-19 response director on July 1st. So he will share just a little bit more about our path forward. And Amy Sebring is assuming the role of COO on July 1st, and she will share more on our financial position. I'd like to take the rest of my time to talk about the powerful and incredibly painful awakening our country has seen in recent weeks. We are called to the urgency of anti-racist work. And for me, that means that looking at the systematic disadvantage that accrues to race in our country and dismantling that disadvantage, creating true fairness. I and William and Mary's leadership are committed to accelerating our effort to eliminating the systematic effects of bias and discrimination from William and Mary, and more broadly from our communities. And that commitment is shared by our faculty, our students, and our staff. This is a longstanding commitment for me personally. It's also one William and Mary has a special obligation to lead in because of our particular history as a formerly slaveholding institution. And we're not where we aim to be. That's something I think important for the community to grapple with. Listening to the students and faculty and staff of color over the past 2 years, listening to our Black students and faculty and staff this past month, that's really clear. This past week, I've been heartened also by how widespread and shared that understanding is of that fact of not being where we want to be among William and Mary leadership. As you know, this past week, faculty assembly, staff assembly, and PPFA worked with me to identify actions that we could accelerate this coming year that would bring results even during pandemic. And actually, I want to say perhaps especially during pandemic, at a time when so many inequities are being laid bare and intensified. So as we talked last week, I also stayed closely in touch with Student Assembly leadership who are similarly engaged. And I know that our president, AJ, will talk about this in a moment. I want to start this year, which is what we're doing now, by welcoming those partnerships. I see that partnership as critical to anti-racist work and to D&I work more broadly. It's essential if you want to accelerate that work, and that's the key verb I want us to continue to commit to: accelerate. Many of you know the African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. In higher ed, you can go far and fast when you put the effort in to be transparent and when you travel in the company of others. So, as you know, there are several immediate actions underway already that depend on that idea of partnership to increase speed. One is some wonderful work our Chief Cheeseborough has led last week, meeting with more than a dozen student organizations to express her commitment to bias-free practices on in-campus safety and her specific commitment to protect the rights and safety of our Black students and faculty and staff. From that meeting, she's developed a comprehensive plan for the fall that she'll be sharing in August that includes data sharing from her unit. We want to move forward in a data-driven way. It also includes holding monthly open meetings with the community to continue that feedback loop of input from students and others. I'm really grateful for her swift and direct response and for that transparency. Second way to accelerate change is to expand who we invite in as partners in the broadest way possible. So I'm really thrilled that we are elevating diversity and inclusion as our focus for One Tribe, One Day. William & Mary is going to invite all of our far-flung alumni and friends around the globe to support specifically our Center for Student Diversity, our Diversity and Inclusion Fund, the Lemon Project, and the Memorial to the Enslaved, together with our Scholarship Impact Fund, because access for students continues to be a top priority. We have generous anchor gifts from alumni and friends in all 4 areas. This is going to swiftly advance a fundraising plan that we had started to create earlier this spring for D&I, a much more comprehensive plan than we've had before. I want to add just a few words on the memorial. Dr. Warren Buck on the board, Dr. Sean Glover, Sam Jones, and I walked the site last week looking at our design concept. And it was a solemn and also a really joyful hour we spent there. This is going to be a powerful physical statement honoring those whose labor was stolen by William and Mary, and also creating a space for reflection and reconciliation. And it's so clear that this memorial is going to activate a currently fallow part of our campus in a really welcoming and direct way for visitors and students. As you know, it's right on that arrival point for admissions. This is a good moment to thank Dr. Buck for agreeing to serve on the Design Review Board, which advises the president on such projects. He brings such a deep understanding of our campus landscape and our culture from his time as a student up through many years of service on different boards, and brings so many important perspectives to that work. Also want to thank him for joining William and Mary and me as of July 1st as special advisor to the president for equity in the 21st century. Dr. Buck bringing an incredibly deep track record of change leadership in higher ed, and that is definitely going to speed our thinking and our actions. So thank you. I want to pause just for a moment to acknowledge the milestone decision yesterday by the Supreme Court. As you all know, it ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which forbids employment discrimination because of an employee's race or color, religion, sex, or national origin, clearly prohibits employment discrimination against LGBTQ workers. The test that the court followed was the letter of the law, and the principle underlying it was a core democratic principle of equal justice under the law. So we are living through incredibly painful and also inspiring times where meaningful and visible action to advance justice can be accelerated. And it needs to go faster than 56 years. With that, I want to hand it over to our Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Glover, and then to our Student Assembly President, Anthony Joseph, to share their plans for the year ahead. Dr.
And
Glover.
before you move forward on that, I just want to highlight that the two things that you said. One is just the opportunity that all of us as board members and supporters of diversity have for One Tribe Day next week. And I think you know from the past that I'll be calling you if you haven't made a contribution. So there are a bunch of things that the president highlighted that are priorities, have been priorities for this is an opportunity to move those forward. And I especially want to remind everyone that the board committed last year when the president selected the design to match the contribution for the memorial from Board of Visitors unrestricted fund. So, this is an opportunity to really speed up that process, take it over the finish line. I think we're really excited. Sorry, Dr. Glover.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, President Rowe and Rector Littell. Members of the board, thank you for a few moments to share with you how our university has fared over the last 3 weeks as we continue to operate under a pandemic and wrestle with the visual reminders of the reality of racism and injustice. Not unlike many around the world, our employees have experienced myriad emotions from sadness, anger, fear, and unsettledness. As someone who has committed her personal career to work to eradicate the effects of racism and other ills of our society, I've had to personally grapple with my own feelings of exhaustion and despair. But our mission states that we convene great minds and hearts to meet the most pressing needs of our time. And I think we're experiencing the most pressing need at present. But as I've learned over the years, this work is not for the faint of heart, but requires courage and tenacity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion work is a marathon and not a sprint. It requires preparation, endurance, and resilience. William and Mary has been doing this work for a long time, and the scope has continued to expand as new challenges arise. In this defining moment, we must recommit and redouble our efforts to work towards durable change for ourselves and for others. And we cannot miss the lessons we must learn as a result of this crisis. Everything has changed, and this is a renewed awakening. William and Mary strives to be a community where all members truly feel a sense of belonging. And as we enter into this upcoming year, we will accelerate our efforts and place action behind our values. Earlier this month, President Rose shared a statement to affirm and acknowledge the reactions and emotions and feelings that our faculty, staff, and students were experiencing. In the weeks ahead, our community came together in numerous ways to support those most impacted. Normally, we would be able to gather in our own ways to support colleagues and students to engage in dialogue, but because we were not able to do that, I am very grateful to my colleagues who have led by offering spaces for courageous conversations, by producing resources to learn and develop new skills, to challenge systemic racism and injustice, and by building and creating a path by which all of our students will be given the tools and foundational understanding within the classroom to channel their activism toward positive change. As we chart the path forward, we are reminded of what research affirms. Diversity, equity, and inclusion work is not done best in isolation. Consistent with the president's emphasis on university-wide thinking, we're partnering with our senior leadership and the leaders of assemblies to elevate and accelerate the work of equity and wellness for this academic year. DEI is now at the center of many conversations and has become a priority in many sectors. For example, the governor's chief diversity officer, Dr. Janice Underwood, is overseeing a collective effort for all Virginia institutions to develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan beginning this summer. This is an exciting first, and William and Mary will be actively engaged. This will not just be a static plan that checks a box after completion, but a plan with metric for action and accountability. To highlight just a few actions that have been elevated for DNI in this summer, I would like to thank the provost, deans, and faculty assembly for carefully engaging with the faculty hiring proposal that I presented to the board at its February meeting. We are committed to being innovative and preparing our search committees and departments on the importance of fair and equitable searches by providing preseason training on the importance of fair and equitable searches by providing preseason training on the importance of serving of equitable searches and provide assistance in ways that we might continuously expand our applicant pools to yield opportunities for diversifying our instructional faculty and partnering with our students and being active members in the search process. I too would like to thank Chief Teesboro and her staff for being proactive and intentional to put into place policies that seek to ensure the protection of all students, but specifically our Black students as a result of recent events. I would also like to thank Dr. Matthew Lambert and the advancement team for redirecting the focus of our One Tribe, One Day fundraising efforts to elevate D&I work as we strive to eradicate injustices across the board and create opportunities that promote understanding through sustained dialogue and civil discourse. I would like to publicly thank my colleagues in senior leadership for modeling the way towards inclusive excellence and the leadership of the faculty, staff, professional faculty, and student assemblies for your partnership as we navigate this challenge and opportunity together. Finally, to President Rowe and the board, thank you for your support of DEI efforts in finding innovative ways to maintain the momentum in uncertain times. I end with this quote: "We must be the change we would like to see in the world." Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Glover. Any questions for her? All right, well, we look forward to seeing many of those things come to fruition and to participate in them. President Rowe, I think, were you going to invite AJ to speak?
Yes, I was, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Thank
Over
you,
to
Madam
you.
President. Thank you. And thank
Too many
you.
presidents here.
I know.
President Joseph.
It's awesome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you and your families are healthy and safe. Before we get any further, I would like to let you all know that we will host a town hall this Friday, Juneteenth, to discuss plans to combat systemic injustice. This is an opportunity for students to bring their ideas, concerns, and policy ideas. We have 300 slots, but we'll have no administration response. This is a conversation by and for students, and we want to do the best we can to create an inclusive and inviting environment. Once again, it will be this Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. More information can be found on the Student Assembly's social media platforms and as well as emails that we have. When Kyle and I decided to run for student body president and vice president, we planned to tackle mental health, diversity and inclusion, campus safety, sexual assault, and various other issues on our campus. Recognizing their immense importance then, but we did not know how even more pivotal these missions will become. This is an unprecedented disaster and a worldwide struggle that has uprooted the lives of many and is ravaging vulnerable communities. But the worst thing that has happened is that this pandemic has intensified a greater plague that has afflicted this country for far too long. The pandemic of systemic injustice, racism, and prejudice is a disease that has rotted away at our governing systems and communities for far too long. I know that you all haven't had the opportunity to get acquainted with me, as I am still very new to this and trying to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can. While I was already nervous to speak before you today, the recent appalling murders have made this even more nerve-wracking. However, a wise man once told me to always speak my truth, so I will do so today. And in that spirit, I ask you to receive my words today, not only as a student body president, but as a Black. This isn't propaganda or politics. It's my life. I offer my thoughts to you today with as much candor and respect as I possibly can to express the urgency necessary for actual change to happen. What I will say today does not necessarily emphasize what the Student Assembly is doing, but rather what we all should do to combat an evil that has gone unchecked for too long, an appeal directed at our better inclinations and our heart. 3 weeks ago, I saw something that will probably haunt me for the rest of my life. And a day hasn't passed where I don't think about it and tear up at least once. As a student who focuses on slavery and Jim Crow and how they are embedded within our system, I have seen many photos of lynch victims and the like. I have seen Emmett Till's photo countless times. I have watched all of the videos since then of police brutality and violence in Black communities. I saw Philando's video, Ahmaud's, Brianna's, now Rayshard's, and the list goes on. But none of them prepared me for the pure evil and hatred that I saw in George Floyd's video. It was torture. I have never seen anything like that. It was evil, again, in its greatest form, totally unchecked. And yet, while that video was horrific, the pain that I felt when I watched it was eerily familiar. It was a reincarnation of the ways they tortured Black people before they lynched them, my ancestors. That ancestral pain, it starts in the pit of your stomach and rises, and it paralyzes you. And as I speak before you now, I can feel it. Many Black students at William & Mary and around the world feel it. It reminds us of an unfortunate reality. Despite any small privileges we enjoy, that we have earned, they can and will be taken from us at a moment's notice. And then I turned inward to reflect on how I got here, how the first 18 years of my life led me to William & Mary, to the South, how I have been one step removed from a bad situation every step of the way. So many times in my life thus far, I could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time and would not witness the many blessings that I have received over the years. While I was growing up in a community that was suffering from prejudice and poverty, my mom, while still in school, worked hard to protect me from that pain and suffering. One step removed. When I was afraid that I would not be able to afford to go to college, William & Mary saw something in me that others didn't and gave me the opportunity to thrive. One step removed. When I was pulled over recently for speeding, and I was afraid of how the officer would react, already placing my hands clearly on the steering wheel, starting to record, trying to remember everything that my uncle has taught me about when I am pulled over by the police. He saw my William & Mary bumper sticker, talked to me about it, and left me alone. One step removed. And when I watched that video, I saw George Floyd looking up at me, struggling to breathe, crying out for his mama as he realized that he was going to die, only for me to look above him and see that officer glare at me with such deep hatred. I thought to myself, one step removed. And so did every Black student at William & Mary. And we cannot feel this way anymore. As the second oldest institution in the country and a global innovator, William & Mary has many obligations. We have an obligation to produce a game-changing liberal arts education, to provide a space for our students to explore their passions and desires, to produce not just bright minds, but humble and compassionate individuals. Yet, as the ultimate beholder of this country's deepest and darkest memories, and a witness to many of them, our highest obligation should be to remind this nation from which it stems and demand that it reconciles with its past. That is our highest calling. That is our ultimate mantle of innovation and leadership. And that starts with us. It starts with us acknowledging our history, all of it, the vileness and the valor, the cowardice and the leadership, the profound phrases we celebrate, and the complicit silence we too often overlook. Then we must decide what parts of that identity no longer reflect our values as a university. With our identity so intimately involved in all of the great episodes of American history, we should lead, provide a full account of it, especially its dark interlude. This may start with recognizing Samuel Harris and his contributions to the college, but that's all that is. That's all that it is. A symbolic start. We should create a vetting process for building and department names on campus and elevate those that are true pioneers of equality and equity in education. But we must also get past this. We should have faculty that reflect our students and students that reflect our Commonwealth and beyond. We should do more to attract more students of color to this institution. We need to finally dismantle the white supremacist mechanisms created by our predecessors and make it their worst nightmare. A beacon of opportunity and access for all. Close, I'd like to leave you with scripture with which Reverend Al Sharp used for eulogizing George Floyd during his last memorial service last Tuesday in Houston. This is not to promote any faith or religion, but to voice a call to action that we all need to hear. The reading was from Ephesians 6:12, which says, "For we wrestle not against blood, but against principalities, against power, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." I implore you all to rise against racism and injustice in this country, in the Commonwealth, and at William and Mary. Evil has gone unchecked in this country for far too long and has corrupted the highest echelons of our government. This is the moment where William and Mary must lead to remind this country of where it came from and what it should be. I say this to you as a young Black man trying to do his best to fight the good fight, but also as someone who is already tired. This is a burden that Black people have had to shoulder for too long on their own. As ready as we are, and despite the many petitions that we have already created, this is a profound enemy that my generation cannot fight alone. And with that, I ask, help us fight against spiritual wickedness in high places. Your college and your nation need you.
Thank you, AJ. Well said. I think you asked what William and Mary saw in you. I think your accomplishments and your heartfelt words are evidence of that. So thank you. I think we'll really appreciate it, the work that you've done in the past 3 weeks, you and your colleagues on Student Assembly and the student groups that have been out there coming up with an agenda for change. And I think we look forward to hearing and working with you on that. So thank you very much. President Rowe.
Thanks. I just want to echo what you said, AJ. That was incredibly powerful and pointed and right for right now and for the long term. So we're here to be partnered with Student Assembly in defining that path forward together with our faculty and our staff. Thank you. I'm gonna shift our gears to
Before you shift, I've got a few questions about our diversity. Starting with and I appreciate AJ and his words. Very eloquent, great job. Um, I appreciate you for speaking your truth and for shedding the emotional light on the impatience I think that a lot of us have with the pace of change. We're talking about accelerating, and I want to ask some specific questions with regard to that. One thing is with regard to the symbols on campus and the ways that we continue really to perpetuate white supremacist ideas by naming buildings after white supremacists, by naming programs after white supremacists, um, by naming awards for white supremacists. I mean, what does it mean to an African American student taking, trying to become a history major in a program named after one of the preeminent white supremacists of even today, still looked at as today as a leader of white supremacists? What does it mean to a student or faculty member that's asked to nominate exemplary faculty based on the traits of Thomas Jefferson or James Monroe? And we have a lot of things like that on campus that keep reminding people, not to mention the slave plantation, that keep reminding people that their lives really do not matter. So on the imagery and idolatry, I'd like to know what our plan is. I'm not hearing a whole lot on what we're focusing on here with regard to that. Also, with regard to student diversity, we still gloss over the fact that our student diversity is, is pretty horrible when you look at things, particularly among African Americans at the university. If we don't acknowledge it as a problem, I assume we aren't going to do much to address that problem. So I'd like to hear more about that, and I'd also like to hear more about the notion of doing a diversity audit we talked about last summer, but haven't heard anything on. It's kind of difficult to address, a problem of systematic racism, or even one of these elements of systematic racism, if we aren't doing the data analysis and research and getting the recommendations from independent professionals to really guide us as to what our fix should be. So, how really serious are we about addressing these issues if we aren't doing those basics?
Thank you for putting that out on the table. I think a couple of those key issues around data are the place that the board has asked us to really dig in this year. And our dashboard on data for student diversity, our dashboard on data for faculty diversity is one that we're building and had intended to align with the strategic plan that got interrupted during COVID, but it's the part of that strategic planning process that we intend to complete this August. Dr. Glover mentioned that the Commonwealth is pulling all of higher ed into that process of setting metrics together, not just independently, which I think Mr. Wolf speaks exactly to your point of institutions not thinking solo or in isolation about how to change, but setting our targets as a cohort and holding ourselves accountable to wider than single institution goal setting. So that work is happening at the Commonwealth level right now. It's happening in the equity working group of the Council of Presidents that I'm part of. And Dr. Glover is leading it in partnership with her counterparts. So we will have a D&I strategic plan in August that has pretty clear metrics in it. This last year, we significantly increased financial aid, and we have been doing so since we began the promise in 2013, something like 113%. I think I won't have that exactly right, but in that time, we restructured our Pell Grants this past year in our admission cycle to make this institution more accessible to a wide range of students, particularly first-gen students and underrepresented students. So these are issues that we've been pressing pretty hard on, pretty directly. In terms of anything Dr. Glover, that you'd like to add? Or Director Littell?
I would just like to quickly say that the diversity audit that the board asked for is a part of the strategic plan that we're doing this summer. So that is in the process. We were just held up because of the pandemic.
What's the timeline on the audit?
August.
August.
So it's going to be completed by August?
No, we'll be starting in August because of the pandemic. We weren't able to spend any money or do anything like that. So we have to wait until we're able to move forward.
And can you share the parameters of the audit?
We have not made a procurement choice with regards who will do the actual audit, but it will be an external.
We do, as we each year apply for the HEAT award and look to other national standards, there are pretty clear national standards about higher ed's growth in diversity and inclusion. So we can, of course, share our last set of applications. That's the framework that we plan to generally, and we'll continue to plan to. And I'm welcoming the board's thoughts from other industries on how to build on that framework from higher ed.
Well, I think one of the things is that, we have had, I wouldn't say perfect, we've had a lot of good work done for almost 10 years through the Lemon Project, and then, the work of the Task Force on Race. And I don't remember, maybe Lisa, collectively, or Sean, collectively how many recommendations those two groups made, but I know that all of them have not been implemented. Some for legitimate reasons and some for no other reason maybe than inertia. So I think one thing that would be helpful is if and I don't think it would take very long, but maybe by our July executive committee meeting, Catherine, you could have a listing of all of those recommendations and a status, and then we can talk about why some of them were not implemented and what a path forward would be. I think a lot of what Brian said are components, particularly when we look at hiring in particular departments, initiatives that we could do relative to academic. There was landscape review. And so I think there's a lot of things that, could be addressed. We sort of just went through that list, figured out, are those things that we don't want to do? And if they aren't, then we should be doing.
Well, there were things that weren't even within the jurisdiction of that review, like minority business, which is embarrassing. I don't know if building renaming and program renaming was on that list, but it's something that needs to.
Is on the list. Right.
Well, there was the landscape review that was to look at the whole campus, beyond just buildings, but just to look at, what was the atmosphere that was created. So
the task force is pretty comprehensive. Dr. Glover and I have been looking back at that pretty regularly over the last year as we've laid out the structure for the D&I strategic plan. So we have that audit in our heads. We did a comprehensive alignment of that with the Lemon Project's recommendations when the Lemon Project 10-year report came in, and shared that with the board. So we can go back to that as well. And it would be, I think, welcome to take stock after 5 years to say, what have we accomplished and what have we not? And we have new leadership. We have a series of new leaders coming in that are, I think, really ready to engage this, even under pandemic.
okay.
Mr. Director, this is Victor. I echo Brian's questions, and I think the time of urgency has passed, and we can't let this period of disruption and upheaval die down, and we find ourselves in another year or 5 years going through this cycle. If Jay's comments didn't ring in my ears loud and clear that, the campus eye experience 35 years ago hasn't evolved that much for him. He's going to have some of those same experiences that I had 35 years ago as a student. So I think this time is different, and I feel the change in the wind. And I think this board and this leadership team can clearly make more than incremental changes around the periphery or the edges, that we can start making some bold and some lasting changes that will give this generation of students a total different experience than those that have gone through for them. And I want to be a part of a leadership team that is making those bold changes. And I hear them from Catherine, I hear them from John. I just think we've got to keep ourselves focused and hold ourselves accountable and just laser focused on in making those changes, because we cannot lose another generation to what many for us have done. So women married can make a difference. And so I just want to put that on the record and and support Brian's comments and difficult questions that make me squirm in my seat. Um, but are necessary. So that's my that I don't have a question. I just want to make that heard. Okay.
Mr. Rector,
Go ahead, Barbara.
um, I think AJ's comments, I guess, touched me personally at a very deep level. I'm sure they touched everyone. But what I think AJ's comments scream louder than anything is the need for William and Mary not to come up with another program, not to, as Victor said, look around the edges of this issue, but to really be a leader. I mean, I think there is an opportunity because we do have a unique situation in being so wed in that tradition, and that tradition that includes a tradition of racism and an opportunity with respect to innovation. So the question is for me, not another task force, not another committee, not another study, but a program, a plan that we can announce and implement in ways that people can see measurable change more sooner rather than later. And so, like Victor, I also am prepared to assist in any way that I can in advancing that agenda, because I think we owe it to our students, we owe it to our faculty, and we owe it to ourselves to make that happen. So I just want to once again put that out there, that we can't afford to wait. I do think that there is a momentum and we cannot lose sight of that momentum, and the time is now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. We need to move on to the plans to reopen a campus. And I would just say, if you could, Sam, I think most people here have read a lot of it. So if you could, be brief, I think that'd be helpful.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to do that. I think Jeremy's going to share a screen here. So we all know that the plan ahead effort over the last 5 or 6 weeks set the parameters for how we are going to come back in the fall, and we will come back in the fall. The students have indicated overwhelmingly they want to come back in the fall. They're willing to make changes in how they behave in order for us to have a safe campus. We're doing a lot of work on de-densifying our space. The provost and her group have done tremendous work at the curriculum as well. So Jeremy, next. Our approach is safety-based for both students, faculty, and staff. And as you can see, focused on education first, being sure that people are aware of what they should be doing to keep themselves safe, prevention in a variety of different ways, ultimately testing and tracking of students, tracing, contact tracing, and then being in a position that when we have cases, and we will have cases, that we're prepared to deal with treatment and isolation as we need. Key among that was what was going to be the academic schedule for the forthcoming year. We looked at obviously that it be concentrated. This was came out in the president's release on Friday. We're starting a week earlier, no fall break. We'd have some Saturday evening or online sessions. And you can see the schedule there in terms of spreading out the student move in for new students and returning students between August 12 and 18 before we start class. The whole intent here is to have folks come to campus, get a quality education, a good William and Mary experience, but reduce the number of days on campus. And should there be a resurgence of the virus in the fall, that we would have that break between Thanksgiving and when the spring semester starts, sort of break that cycle, should we need to do that. To support our effort, we are purchasing and procuring a variety of different PPEs, and you can just see some of the numbers here. And all of this continues the number of cloth masks. I would point out that every employee, every student will get a kit when they come back, 2 cloth masks that are rewashable, hand sanitizer, wipes, that type of thing. Temperature taking stations, we're in the process of securing those. So if a student is moving around or anybody else on campus and thinks, hey, I want to do a touchless taking of my temperature, they're able to do that. And then wipes, gloves, and disposable masks for all of our staff. And I say at volume, as many as we need. We're working very closely with procurement cooperative across the state today. As I said at the beginning, education and prevention starts with a student pledge, as part of coming into the housing unit, a pledge that yes, they will do certain things, they will behave in certain ways. We see a room with 2 students or a suite with 4 students is like a family unit. So you have to work to make sure that you're not spreading. A pre-quarantine before students come, asking them to do that. Again, I've talked about the phase movement. Symptom monitoring, we're looking to have an app that does that just almost gives a student or an employee a prompt. Says, be sure you check how you're feeling, and here's the 6 or 7 symptoms you ought to ask yourself whether you have. Clearly, right now in the public buildings on campus, we're requiring use of face masks. We expect that will continue. Physical distancing, even under a phase 3, if we get to that with the governor, is going to be important. So right now, between the registrar and facilities, they're basically going through every classroom and rooms that aren't classroom and figuring out how to use social distance, physical distance, and doing that. And the last one there I would underscore is, everybody wants to put up signs. We want it to be that when you see a sign, you know exactly what message it's trying to tell you. So that's universal. In addition, some of the other things we're doing, limiting the number, size, scope of gatherings, outdoor venues, virtual speakers for the fall semester, continuing to emphasize telework, which we've been doing very successfully since we let the students go home in the spring. But recognizing that once you have the students here on campus, they're going to have to be more staff here on campus to support those students as well as the faculty efforts going on. We will limit the campus visitors, and we're focusing on our core mission as opposed to non-core activities. So some of the things that we traditionally do here at William and Mary, we may do virtually, or we may say, let's defer those to the spring and otherwise. And then on the dining side, a whole set of changes that will be consistent with CDC guidelines, but also with the need to de-densify to get students spread out. There will be COVID cases, as I said earlier. Self-monitoring is going to be really critical for students, faculty, and staff. If you have multiple symptoms, if you're a student, you'll go to the health center. If you're an employee, don't come to work, stay home, go see your health service provider. And then we have identified locations on campus for the students to either self-quarantine if they've been exposed but are not showing symptoms, as well as to be self-isolated if they actually have positive testing. And then finally, next steps, we have a COVID response team that rolls out of the plan ahead effort. And it represents folks across campus. We'll look at the parameters set by the plan ahead, and you can see the different squads within that and the kinds of things. These are not all of them that'll be focused on. Clearly, classroom configuration, including expansion to other spaces on campus. You know, as the president said very often, in this case, all space is university space. We'll use it to make sure we can safely, instruct our students. A clear focus on wellness, led by Kelly Crace, for students and employees, but not just physical, which is, of course, we talked about with the COVID, but the mental health and the stress that goes along with this being considered. And then you can see the other things there that we will be looking at with where we know are the heavy gathering spaces that occur. So, Mr. Rector, that's where we are. We'll spend the next weeks following very much what Dr. Sato said about Richard Bland. We have the parameters, we have the approach, and then it's getting to all the details of making sure that when the students come back and faculty and staff return, it can be done in the safe.
And thanks, Sam. What is the process by, for students and then for faculty and staff who either have concerns or have immune issues, to just make sure that they're accommodated in the fall?
Yeah, we will.
How do they go about that?
For employees, we'll have a process to go through the human resource department. So if there's identified as someone who has an underlying health condition, that we will work with them in order to, maybe if you're a faculty member, you'll do online courses versus in-person courses. In terms of that, students, that's still to be worked out. Other than they need to self-identify, and I think that's a critical piece of this. There's some self-responsibility that goes with this and being back on campus, because we can help folks if we know. So we'll approach.
Okay, good.
I've got a question along that line.
Yes, sir.
Is there any coordination with Pamela Mason and the compliance department because of the ADA implications of this?
Absolutely, both with compliance and legal as well. There are lots of rules around medical records and that type of thing, and collection of data. And we'll walk very carefully with them, to make sure we haven't violated any of the acts that.
And if I may add, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Sam, I have a question. Logistically, the voluntary or the expected 8 to 14 day self-isolating, how are you going to be dealing with students who are flying to our campus?
I can't prevent how they travel, right? What we will be encouraging is for them to have self-isolated before then, probably at least 8 days, because that's about the time it takes for someone to show symptoms if they've been exposed. If they fly to campus, what we will have is ways to, and we're still putting the details into this, but being able to identify ways to monitor, take temperatures, and that type of thing. The self-monitoring when you get here is just going to be really critical. So student behavior when they first arrive, and we will encourage that. There will be education materials included in the kit we give them, and probably more signage anyone wants to see that sure you're checking your symptoms in that.
Right. I guess I'm just, they can have self-isolated for the required period of time, and they're coming from California, and who knows who else is on the airplane with them. Where did they go when they get to William and Mary?
When they go to William and Mary, if they've done the self-isolating, they will not be quarantined beyond that just because of the way they travel. We don't see that as appropriate. But again, the hope is that they will pay attention, self-monitor, and if they show any symptoms at all, that we'll be able to check that. We'll have ways if we want to say, well, when you first get here, let's check your temperature. What we know with this virus is that it doesn't immediately show. I mean, it could be multiple days, whether you flew or whether you traveled some other.
Director, one question for Sam. This is Will Payne. Sam, how will our IT infrastructure be impacted with the stepped up engagement, via Zoom and otherwise online that I guess we haven't experienced on campus last?
First, I would say the IT and the studio for learning responded tremendously in a short period of time to going completely online with something like 2,000 courses in the spring. Where we are going from here is because of the physical distancing it's required. We're looking at spaces that ordinarily would not be used as classrooms being used that way. And so we're looking at the equipment and the spacing that needs to be provided into each of those classrooms so that when a faculty member goes in to teach, smaller scale in terms of the number of students, but they'll still have all of the technology in place to actually provide class. What we did with Zoom early on, and we will continue, is, we expanded the amount of time that you can use Zoom. We started off with an hour. We realized that didn't work at all, but also the number of folks who can be involved with. So I would say, IT under Amy and now Ed, as he is doing, but also the studio, we're working in conjunction with the faculty and with the curriculum committee to have everything.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great. Any other questions for Sam?
Sam, just Tom Watkins here. One question. Recognizing you're doing some on campus and some online, will the system offer flexibility if a student has come to campus but doesn't feel comfortable continuing on campus or doesn't even feel well, to sort of move to an online situation within the semester? I'm sure you don't want a situation where students feel can't leave because I'll lose course credit, I'll have to drop the course, whatever. I would assume we'll want flexibility in the system where it's fair and the right thing to do. Will that be built into a system we're going to have?
The answer is yes. The provost may want to comment on that because that would have been looked at in more detail in her group.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, flexibility and multiple ways of imparting knowledge are part of what we are doing. So we don't know when and how and when and who will require this and how extensive it will be, but we are going to be prepared. This is part of how we are developing our fall curriculum and how we're training our faculty to understand the multiple options that exist so that we are doing our best to both accommodate difficulties in delivery if they come from the perspective of faculty and staff, but also from the perspective of students.
Thank
you. Okay. Thank you. I'm sure we will continue to get frequent updates on that, so appreciate it.
Yes,
before we move on to the financial outlook, just want to see if our faculty and professional and staff reps want to have any comments before we move on. Professor Forrestal, I know you're here somewhere.
I am here. Do you want an update?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So my update is very quick. I just wanted to let you know that in this plan ahead, overall view, faculty have been involved. Several of our executive committee members have contributed significantly to especially the plan for bringing students back into the classroom. And over the last couple of weeks, the executive committee of the Faculty Assembly has been working with Peggy and with Catherine. They've really reached out to us to increase transparency and also to get our feedback. We really appreciate having the opportunity to provide that feedback. And the plan is for us to continue these conversations as things evolve. So that's my update. Thank you very much, Director.
Thank you, and thank you for that work. Mr. Wheelis.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. My update is quick as well. Staff Assembly has been busy with their transition. Ariel Newby has been elected president for the upcoming year. And they also have been working and doing town hall or water cooler talks for staff, which have been very successful. and they are continuing those over the summer, and released a statement about the Black Lives Matter and its impact on our employees that they represent that are Black, Indigenous, people of color. In that, we've also been doing a lot of collaboration with President Rowe and her senior leadership team and the faculty and staff assemblies and PPF all been working together. I think in an unprecedented way. Really remarkable how we've all kind of come together. It started earlier this year with Jeremy's monthly meetings with the assembly presidents, and really has created some structure to share information, be part of a collaborative team, and really do some quality work for the institution. So that is my update. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. AJ, anything else you want to add from the student side?
No additional comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. All right, President Rowe, I think you're going to have Amy and Samantha next.
Amy. Yep.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I was on mute. Wanted to spend just a couple of minutes giving you an update on how fiscal year 20 appears to be ending. You saw early on some of our initial estimates where we were anticipating that the impact of COVID could be between 13 to 32 million. Really by the end of summer was the initial time frame that we were looking at. If you'll recall, those early estimates really were in March when we were just beginning this journey and really had not yet fully wrapped our heads around what this meant for the institution or for the economy. We were transitioning remotely. We still had students that we were working to get back safely into the country. The research community was adapting to new protocols to make sure that they continue doing research effectively. And our procurement services team was working diligently with general counsel to figure out how we exit contracts that we can no longer execute pandemic conditions. So 3 months later, I'm really happy to tell you, it looks like we are going to come in well under the low estimate. We're at just below a $10 million loss right now. Certainly not good news by any stretch, but we're in much better position than I think we had feared. And we've done that largely through the dedication of faculty, staff, controlling costs, really focusing on hiring where we're only hiring in essential mission critical positions and focused on contract negotiations and managing through those effectively. For the rest of the summer, our summer enrollment looks good. One of the only upsides, I think, to having students as a captive audience this summer is that summer jobs and summer travel are limited, obviously, for many of them, and they are taking advantage of our summer off. So that's all good. We still have a number of questions. If we go to the next slide, as we monitor going into FY21, we are watching diligently, and these were some of the key questions that I brought to you at our last meeting about a month ago. Thought I'd share with you today where we are in terms of answering those questions, still realizing that much is involved. The good news is our incoming class remains strong. We're ahead of target for the upcoming freshman class slightly. So that's great news and really puts us in an envious position relative to many of our the returning undergraduates, again, are ahead of last year. In fact, our in-state numbers are actually down slightly, but our out-of-state numbers are up. So we're considering that all good news. Law, education, and VEMS likewise are ahead of the same time last year. And business registration started a little bit later in this cycle, so we don't yet have the full picture, but they expect to be likewise ahead of where they were last year by the time we start the academic year. The only decline we've seen, or slight declines in graduate arts and sciences, due largely to students completing their degrees more timely. So that's good news for the students, less good news for those of us that are watching the checkbook, but still all really good indicators for where we are. In public health, you all know Virginia is now in phase 2, and we watch along with everybody in terms of understanding how the economy reopens, how we're able to reopen all of our entities. And Sam shared with you, we are paying very close attention to what we must do in order to have appropriate people tested. we're working closely with colleagues at Department of Health and with other higher ed institutions. State appropriations, we got a little bit of good news actually yesterday. Secretary Lane briefed House Appropriations and noted that although the Commonwealth continues to see declining state revenues, that May actually didn't see as steep of a decline as April. And so, although at one point he was suggesting that the state could see $1 billion plus revenue loss as a result of COVID in FY20, as of yesterday, he said it's looking more like. So we'll see what happens in June. June's going to be a pivotal month for the state with income taxes shifting to June 1st. But again, that picture appears to be a little bit better than it did a month or so ago. We do have a few key dates coming up in the next 6 weeks. On July 10th, the governor has indicated that he will announce where the state ended the fiscal year. So that'll be the first time we'll get a formal number on that. The Joint Advisory Board of Economists meets on July 20th, and the Governor's Advisory Council on Revenue Estimates meets on August 3rd. We're still expecting that a special session of the General Assembly will be called later in August, and those will all be key dates for us. In terms of federal grants and contracts, current awards appear to be holding, and I spoke with Dennis Manos yesterday, and he indicated that our indirect cost recoveries for FY20 are on pace for prior year. Philanthropy and athletics still remain largely as questions for us. We'll get some indication next week with One Tribe, One Day in terms of how the donor community is responding. And athletics, Director Hughey continues to participate actively in the NCAA governance conversation as well as CAA. So early indicators remain positive. There's still a lot that we're monitoring and still a level of uncertainty. We expect to have more definitive answers by late.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Tom Watkins here. On the incoming class ahead of target, but your point about international still uncertain. Is the assumption that's built into the incoming class ahead of target that the current international travel situation remains the same, or are we expecting or planning on better news than is currently the case? How conservative are we on the international to buttress the incoming, particularly the out of state is ahead of in?
It's a really good question, and actually those out of state numbers include international. By virtue of not being in state, they therefore are out of state. Steve Hansen is working really closely with Henry Broaddus and others in both domains, being able to anticipate and work with and expect that the students will come back, and then also recognizing that travel restrictions may prevent some subsets. We're working through how do we make sure to be able to offer them alternatives in the fall if we need.
So would you say the incoming class ahead of target is still at risk because of the international situation, or is it relatively conservative?
No, that number still includes our international population. So if they aren't able to return, that will. And with that, Mr. Director, that's all I have, unless there are additional questions.
Great job.
Sorry, any questions? All right, with that, we're going to go into closed session. We will return at the end of closed session for the adoption of the certification resolution, as well as a number of other resolutions that we'll consider at the time. So at this point, I'd like to ask Secretary Sue Gertelman to read the motion.
Pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2 3711.A.1 for discussion of the following assignment. For the following assignment, appointment, performance, and salaries of specific officers or employees, including the president and executive leadership team, the performance of schools and departments where the discussion will necessarily involve evaluation of the performance of specific individuals. And pursuant to Code 2.2-3711.A.6 for the discussion of investing public funds where competition is involved and the financial interest of the university is affected. Pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711.8.8 for the consultation with legal counsel regarding specific personnel and compliance matters requiring legal advice.
Do I have a second? Lisa, thank you. All those in favor, Mike, will you call the roll?
The roll. Director,
Aye.
Payne.
Aye.
Ms. Bertelman,
Aye.
Master Ponte,
Aye.
Begg,
Aye.
Branch,
Aye.
Dr. Buck.
Aye.
Bunch,
Aye.
Mr. Hickson,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Judge Poston,
Aye.
Ms. Roday, Ms. Schultz,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
and Mr. Woolfolk.
Aye.
Director.
All righty. So we're going to go into closed session. I believe that we just wait to get the invite, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, Sue, if you'd provide the motion, please.
I move that we certify by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirement under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed, and only matters identified in the motion to have the closed session were discussed. For second.
Director,
Aye.
Mr. Payne,
Aye.
Ms. Gertleman,
Aye.
Ambassador Ponte, Mr. Begg,
Aye.
Branch,
Aye.
Dr. Buck,
Aye.
the Bunch,
Aye.
Mr. Hickson,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Judge Poston,
Aye.
Ms. Roday,
Aye.
Ms. Schultz,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins, Mr. Woolfolk.
Aye.
All right.
Did you
Mr.
get
Watkins,
Tom?
Mr. Rector. Yep.
I was
Okay.
an aye.
All right. Thank you all. Sorry that we took so long. All right. So the first resolution, we have 5 resolutions to do this afternoon. The first resolution is Resolution 1 is to authorize President Rowe to take temporary personnel actions if warranted. Catherine, do you just want to give a highlight of the resolution? You're muted.
I am muted, unmuted.
There
Thank
go.
you. Start by saying that the uncertainty in the economy and the pandemic's impact on our finances remain. There are a couple of dimensions of uncertainty that in the near term, in the next probably 6 weeks, we'll get better clarity on. We may see budget cuts from the Commonwealth. We may see impacts on philanthropy from our alumni and friends. They may not be able to give as generously as they have in the past. We're definitely seeing additional costs to protect the health and well-being of our community. That will increase, and we need to understand what our families are going to need to do, understanding that it's a different economy. Public health circumstances may guide their decisions and may also impact our ability to live and learn together in Williamsburg. So I am an optimist. To quote the VR pioneer Randy Posh, one thing that makes it possible to be an optimist is if you have a contingency plan. So I'm bringing this action for contingency planning to the board to make necessary changes available to us, additional tools if necessary, given what I've just said about the coming year. We only have, when we face real deficits at William & Mary, we have very severe options, much more severe than these. And I am asking to fill a policy gap to authorize the president to do temporary actions on compensation rather than the permanent ones that are currently allowed. I've talked with the Faculty Assembly, Staff Assembly, and PPFA about moving swiftly to create the policies that we need more permanently. But should any of the factors I described require broad personnel actions, I would like to be able to act in the interest of the university. We're going to follow 4 principles as we do so. You can see what the policy there will be. I just put it up. We would be protecting our core learning mission and teaching, learning, and research. We would look first to temporary actions, such as furloughs and salary reductions, not permanent ones, not first. Senior university leaders would be the first impacted. And when we think about university-wide actions, we would seek to protect our lowest paid employees. So that we're thinking of as the $50,000 threshold annually to the extent possible, and not push people who are near that threshold below that threshold. These are tough things to talk about, but contingency planning is really, really necessary. I just want to say a couple more things about what it means to be temporary here. The board committed under the promise to achieve more competitive salaries for faculty and staff. We have made improvements, but we are not there. And that's why it's important to be able to focus on temporary actions to give us the chance of financial conditions allowed to recover. So that's the proposal that I'm bringing, the request I'm bringing to you.
Okay. So I will move that resolution, authorize the president to take temporary personnel actions if warranted. Do I have a second? Lisa, Ms. Roday, second it. So any conversation?
Mr. Rector,
Yes, Ambassador.
I have, well, I understand and realize that there are times that are difficult and times that call for extraordinary actions. This pandemic is certainly one of them. Nonetheless, I have two concerns about the resolution. One is the lack of grievance procedures during the furloughs or salary reductions, because this reminds me of the lack of due process, which is such an important feature of all our processes here. And I'm concerned that there be a valve or a pressure release mechanism for people who dissent or disagree, that they have some kind of record. That's the first concern. Second concern has to do with the report to the board and the ability of the board to be at all times, especially when tough decisions like furloughs and salary reductions come around, that we know about it and that we know about it on a frequency much more than quarterly. It has to be a tighter, I think, a tighter time.
Love to be able to respond to that because I think those are really important caveats to raise and very close to the spirit of my thinking too. Very happy to report to the board on a monthly basis on this. I mean, we are certainly talking at that rate, and I think that we need to under pandemic. This is not business as usual, and it's not going to be for a long time. So I welcome that. And on the question of grievance, this is not outlawing grievances overall. It's simply with respect to individual temporary actions while we put together the policies that would permit such grievances, which we don't have right now. So we're bridging a policy gap that does need to be filled. And I will say again, I'm really grateful to faculty and staff, assembly, and PPFA for agreeing to work quickly on bridging that gap.
And Catherine, if I can just add one other point in the delegation, it references to needing to take actions based on categories of employees. So this is not an action that would, these salary reductions or furloughs would not happen for individual employees, which is where we would normally have a grievable action. It can only happen in classes of employees or university-wide.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Very important to raise. Thank you.
And I too have a concern about the very point. Appreciate your explanation, Madam President, and agree with you. So I do want to be supportive in what this resolution holds. I would also like to highlight, though, the fourth whereas, which we are expressing deep appreciation for the commitment to William and Mary's staff and faculty during this remarkable time. It's extraordinary what has taken place and continues to have William and Mary shine. So again, I do have concerns about moving with this, but it sounds very temporary, and I know, please know that of my support, that I know that the good decisions will be made in a collaborative effort.
Thank you. I want to say thank you, Professor Schultz, because I think one thing that you recognize that I feel really is that we succeed as a university because of the integrated work of faculty and staff, that work separately at creating a home for students, a place for students to grow and become adults, which staff are deeply invested in, and faculty too, and that work of growing them as thinkers, critical thinkers, compassionate thinkers, which faculty are deeply invested in and staff too. Those two kinds of work succeed because they are intertwined with each other. And we have a business model that depends on long-term relationships, and you don't cultivate a workforce like ours quickly. So hence the real importance of having temporary actions at our disposal, because right now we only have permanent ones at our disposal. So thank you for that, Professor Schultz.
So has an amendment been accepted to the resolution?
There hasn't been one proposed. Are you talking about for the monthly?
Yeah.
No, it has not been proposed.
But
Would
I-
you
I-
like to propose that?
I would like to propose an amendment.
Second.
Happy
All
to
right.
accept that as a friendly amendment under Robert's rules.
Yes. Michael, do we have to vote on that?
Can I just accept it as a friendly amendment, which is traditional under Robert's rules?
Accept.
And,
All right.
and I think you
All
could
right.
vote on it, the resolution as amended.
All right, good.
Okay.
All right, any other
Thank you.
comments?
And the
No.
grievance issue, is there an amendment on that?
Well, I
No.
didn't think it was needed because we're not talking about specific employee,
That's right.
with the exception of the president, who is outside of this and is managed by the board. Everything would be a class, not a specific division. So I think that would solve.
That is the reason that it is not grievable, because it's not individuals.
Well, I think, we started talking about this in the previous open session about the budget situation. And I do want to just note that, this is an area that the board takes really seriously. At every single board meeting, we talk about personnel actions. We approve appointments by the faculty and senior staff. We talk about the salary scales that we're shooting for. We approve the budget. So it is something that we do take seriously. It is our authority. This is an extraordinary time, and this is an extraordinary resolution for us to delegate some of this authority to you. I do think, just reiterating again, this is temporary. And not just a temporary delegation, but it is intended to look for temporary actions that will address the state of emergency in the most compassionate and consistent with our strategy way possible. And I do want to just reiterate that the values that were on the first slide are really important to this board. That we do maintain our mission, we maintain the classes that are needed for students to graduate, that they are able to, be engaged with faculty, that the staff are, particularly staff lower income staff campus, are protected from decisions. So I think those are just really important for us to keep in mind as we move forward. So thank you all for your.
I'm satisfied.
So, Michael, will you call the roll, please?
Right, resolution 1 is amended. Director
Aye.
Payne,
Aye.
Ms. Gertleman,
Aye.
Ambassador Ponte,
Aye.
Begg, Mr. Branch,
Aye.
Dr. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Bunch,
Aye.
Mr. Hickson,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Judge Poston.
Aye.
Mr. O'Day.
Aye.
Ms. Schultz,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
Mr. Woolfolk,
Aye.
Director.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, resolution 2 is appointment to serve for the rector or the rector's designee to serve as an ex officio trustee of the William and Mary Foundation. It is part of the restructuring that is underway. that the William and Mary Foundation and the other foundations of William and Mary are in the process of doing. The resolution is on the screen. Do I have a motion to? Do I have a motion for it?
Mr. Rector, so moved.
All right.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Before we vote on this, can I say a few things? No session.
Yeah, of course.
In
Well-
terms of the overall agreement, we are, having some discussions regarding some of the concerns that I've raised. I've raised concerns regarding transparency, concerns regarding diversity and inclusion, and concerns regarding access that the Board of Visitors and would have to information at the foundation. As we continue to express these issues, I would like for the students, faculty, and staff to be engaged in these discussions. I think that they will have an important role in helping craft the right foundation relationship to ensure that both entities thrive. But I think, we're going to have to be very careful about these issues of transparency. This is one issue along the line, and I think, that what everyone's talking about is an improvement, but I'm not sure if we get to where we should go or where I'm comfortable being. But I will support the resolution, but the resolution is not nearly enough of what I'm looking for.
Understood. And I will work to ensure that the kinds of access to thinking about policy and philosophy is available.
Mr. Director, I just add one point. Will Payne, we know that the president, in the midst of COVID, while addressing the most significant challenges this university has probably faced, has made this board's relationship with the foundation a top priority for the university. Others have supported Matthew Lambert, Carrie Nee, Michael Powell, and many others. Both the president and the rector have put in significant time with members of this board. We elected you, Rector Littell, a clear sign of trust. It's more than fair to say that we trust that you will represent us and address our concerns now and in the future. Thank you for helping get us to this point. We are in a good place. We're in good hands more than anything, and we're acting in good faith. Thank you.
Okay. Did I have a second?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion?
Call the question.
All right. All those in favor? I'm sorry, Michael. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Rector,
Aye.
Mr. Payne,
Aye.
Ms. Berleman,
Aye.
Ambassador Ponte,
Aye.
Begg, Mr. Branch, Dr. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Bunch,
Aye.
Mr. Hickson,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Judge Poston,
Aye.
Ms. Roday,
Aye.
Ms. Schultz,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
Mr. Woolfolk.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. The motion carries, and we will take those, your point, Brian. All right. Resolutions 3 through 5. I'm going to ask Doug Bunch, as the chair of academic affairs, to move, please.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. We have resolutions 3 through 5. Resolution 3 is to fill vacancies in the executive faculty. It appoints Robert C. Knoepel, Dean of the School of Education, and A. Benjamin Spencer, Dean of the School of Law, both effective, Dean Knoepel effective July 15th, Dean Spencer effective July 1st. Resolution 4 is a resolution to fill a vacancy in the instructional faculty, appoints A. Benjamin Spencer, Professor of Law, and Resolution 5 further appoints A. Benjamin Spencer, Chancellor, Professor of Law. So I move that resolutions 3 through 5 be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All righty. Mr. Fox, will you call the roll?
Director,
Aye.
Payne,
Aye.
Ms. Gertleman, Ambassador Ponte,
Aye.
Mr. Begg, Mr. Branch,
Aye.
Dr. Buck,
Aye.
Mr. Bunch,
Aye.
Mr. Hickson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Judge Poston,
Aye.
Ms. Roday,
Aye.
Ms. Schultz,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
and Mr. Woolfolk.
Aye.
Director.
Right. Motion carries. We are really looking forward to our two new deans joining our other new dean, Dean Baleka, in July, and going to be a great new day. And we will honor our outgoing deans at some point when we're all together. So thank you. Is there any other new business that we should consider? I'm expecting dinner to arrive here, Michael. So, all right. This is also the last meeting of our colleague Warren Buck, and we will get the opportunity in September, if COVID allows us, to gather to celebrate your contributions and the other board reps that are leaving this year. But I did want to thank you very much. You've been a great friend to the board. You have brought a ton of wisdom, ranging from your days as a physics graduate student through your time as a provost. And we are really glad that you're back in Williamsburg, and are really grateful that you have agreed to serve in a volunteer capacity on several fronts that will continue to allow us to benefit from your wisdom. You've been a huge proponent of STEM, particularly among students of color. You have been a great advocate for this board and the comedy of this board and of Highland and other initiatives, and a constant vocal advocate on behalf of X. We're going to miss you, but we're glad that you're still around. So thank you very much. And Warren, I hate to invite you to speak because it could be a while, but I would give you the floor for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Director, for such a nice set of words to share with all of us. I arrived at William & Mary 52 years ago.
Wow.
That's when I came in as a graduate student. And even with COVID now, I didn't get to be inducted into the old guard because it was canceled. Hopefully, will be reinstated this fall. It's been a great pleasure working with each of you. It's been a memorable experience for me. And by the way, I was chancellor, actually, Mr. Rector. I got to run a university campus. This is a special place. And I keep coming back to help where I can. And I'll continue to do that as long as I'm helpful. So I will be around, won't be too far away. And so I look forward to seeing all of you. And again, just thank you so much for the great experiences here. And you can tell by the discussions that I still have full plate coming up here real soon. So I won't be idle. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, just a reminder, we have an executive committee meeting on July 15th. All the board members are, of course, welcome to join us. Sue has an incoming class of, a 2035 student there. And our board retreat currently planned in Williamsburg will be August 3rd and 4th. So if there's no further business for us to consider, I will consider us adjourned. Thank you all for spending so much time, and especially for those people that have been waiting for us and on YouTube. And Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.